Hey guys, it's Miss Heckman here to talk to you about cell communication. Before we get started on how cells communicate, I'm just going to give you a quick analogy with how we communicate. So the first one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you 3 examples and then it'll be 3 examples for cells. So for humans, one thing that we do, maybe every once in a while, is pass a physical note. So if I wanted to tell Miss Shrove something and I wanted to tell her what was on my sticky note, I would have to walk over to her and hand it to her directly, be in direct contact. And sometimes that's more convenient. If you guys are taking a test and I can't talk, I'm just going to be in direct contact and hand it to her. Number 2 is an email. So emails are great when I want to send a direct message to one of you. Maybe you forgot to take a test or something like that, and I can email you directly and no one else needs to know, but at the same time, I don't have to come in contact with you. I don't have to go to your home or go find you in class. I can just shoot you an email and you get the message and we don't have to be in the same place. The third form of communication that I'm going to talk about today is your Snapchat story. So when you post your Snapchat story, you are not sending it to one specific person. You do not have an intended audience really in mind. You are sending that message out to everyone that follows you. So if you have to share something and you want anyone and everyone to know, and you're going to put on your Snapchat story, and those who follow you can decide to watch it or not. So those are our 3 forms of communication. How does that compare to how cells communicate? So our first way that cells communicate is with cell-to-cell contact. So that are these little guys right here. This is 2 cells, and they are communicating just, oops, sorry guys, where's my pen? There we go. They're communicating straight across the cell like this. So there's no distance that has to be traveled. They are just basically handing a sticky note from one cell to another cell. But in this case, they use different chemicals to communicate. So we have cell-to-cell contact, and today the example we're going to talk about is the immune system. Now, that's our first one. Another one is short distance communication. Oftentimes you'll hear this referred to local regulators communicating. So in this example we have these 2 cells right over here. And this is their little signal that one cell is sending to another cell. So this cell shot that signal out and then it's going to go straight into this cell. So if you look, there's not a huge distance here between the 2 cells, but they are not in direct contact like these guys up here. Our final way that cells communicate is over a long distance. So this cell over here is going to be sending out a signal in every direction for whoever wants it. So not only could the signal travel far all the way up to these cells, it's also sending out multiple signals all at once. It's your Snapchat story. It's saying, here I am, and here's my message, and whoever wants it or needs it can have it. So this cell is having a long distance communication, and the example we are going to talk about today is human growth hormone. Okay, so like I said, our first example is going to be direct cell-to-cell contact. And in this situation, our example is our immune system. So sometimes something called an antigen will enter into your body, and an antigen is really anything that's not welcome. So in this case, we're going to talk about a bacteria. So a bacteria like this one right here is going to enter into your body. And then this thing called a phagocyte is going to eat it. So a phagocyte is a cell, and it is going to attach on to that bacteria and absorb it and break it down. So that's our first part. These 2 guys had to come in direct contact for communication. Then it's going to break down all that bacteria and present some parts of it out on the outside of itself. So that's what's happening here. So it ate up that bacteria, and now down here it's showing other cells a part of that bacteria. So then a helper T cell is going to come and latch on to the phagocyte and figure out the shape of the bacteria. So once that helper T cell latches on and comes into direct contact with the phagocyte, then it's activated, and the helper T cell, which is right here, now knows the exact shape of the bacteria that they're looking for. So the helper T cell is actually going to go talk to a few other cells called B cells and killer T cells, and they're all going to work together to kill whatever bacteria is trying to take over your body, and they all have to come in contact so they can share that exact shape of the bacteria that we're looking for. So the next one that we're going to talk about is our local regulator. So this right here, we are talking about cells that are close to each other and sending a message directly to one another, but they are not in direct contact. So our example of this is a neuron. So neurons send messages to and from your brain. So they are super important, from one neuron to another. Neurons talk to each other, but they don't, like I said, they don't actually touch each other. They communicate via these things called neurotransmitters, which are a tiny chemical that move from one neuron to the next. So neurons come in contact at this little spot right here called a synapse, and then this is a zoomed in version of a synapse. So basically what happens is these neurotransmitters move their way down the neuron, and then they're released into this little empty space called the synapse, and then they go straight from here and bond to these other receptors on the other neuron, and then that communication is sent, and they go down a direct path, and the path continues from neuron to neuron to get the message wherever it needs to go in your body. So you might think, okay, that's really silly if they just have to talk to each other. Like, what is even the point of having this little gap right here? I mean, it seems pretty clear that they just need to talk to each other. So what scientists think is really important is that we have this gap so that we really can control the messages being sent, because if they are constantly in contact, the body would have no way to block neurotransmitters coming in or even filter how much. If all of these were just released directly into here and there was no space where they had to bond to a receptor, we would probably have like too much neurotransmitter action, and then our nervous system would be really overwhelmed. But the big picture here is that there is that gap, and the gap actually does serve a purpose in this situation. So our example of this is endorphins. There they are. Oh, sorry guys, I'm bad at my pen still. Okay, endorphins. So when you go on a run and you run for a long time, it has to be like 90 minutes to 2 hours, a long time of running, your body starts to release these things called endorphins. And if you are any kind of endurance athlete, you probably have experienced that endorphin rush before. It's often referred to as a runner's high. And so what actually happens is, if we go back to this picture, so if you're running for 2 hours, your body's neurons are releasing neurotransmitters that are saying, stop, I'm in pain, this hurts. But if you get endorphins to help you out, they will actually come in here. Oh my gosh, my stupid pen, sorry. They will come in here and block that message from happening, and they will bond to the receptors, and you don't, well, I mean, you will feel some pain, but basically endorphins block pain from happening. So obviously, now that we know that, humans have taken advantage of that knowledge to create different drugs, and things like morphine do exactly that. They use endorphins to block your body from feeling pain. All right, one more. Long distance communication. So in this case, we are going to talk about a hormone called human growth hormone. So that chemical is, or that hormone is released up here in your pituitary gland, and it goes all the way out here to pretty much your whole body. Human growth hormone is involved in. And human growth hormone is supposed to be released when humans need to be growing, as you might guess. So what it does is it's released by the brain, and it goes out and comes in contact with so many different cells, because there are a lot of things in your body that has to grow. Your organs grow, your bones grow, your muscles grow, a ton of different things are happening all as this human growth hormone is released. So when you're doing long distance communication, one thing to remember is that it's very often a hormone. So this is normal. It happens all the time. This is your Snapchat story. Your brain is just posting out there, hey guys, it's time to grow. And whoever needs to grow will watch that story and get that message and start growing. But sometimes the body doesn't quite work right and you produce too much growth hormone. So this man right here is what's called a pituitary giant. So basically his story is he had a tumor on his pituitary gland that caused his body to continue to produce human growth hormone, and so he ended up being a giant. And so his muscles and bones and organs just continued to grow and grow. So his long distance communication message just never stopped. So that's kind of the basics of what we're going to talk about for cell communication. So if I just go back to our very beginning of our PowerPoint, we'll remember we have cell-to-cell contact, we have short distance with a local regulator, or long distance communication. So hopefully that helped, guys.